Hi, I'm Simon Taylor, the CEO and founder of HYCU, the world's fastest growing data protection as a service company and a proud partner of Okta. I'm here today with Randy George, the Vice President of Technology Operations for the Boston Red Sox. Now, this means a lot to us because we live right here in Boston where we're headquartered, and the Boston Red Sox are one of our flagship customers. Randy, it's great to have you here today.
Thanks, Simon. It's good to be with you.
Well, thank you for spending so much time with us. I know we had a great dinner just a few nights ago, and we started to talk about some of these themes, but we thought we'd kind of bring them to life for our friends at Okta by talking a little bit about the relationship, how we got started, and ultimately how the Okta and HYCU solutions work together to support the Boston Red Sox goals. Does that sound good?
Awesome. Yes.
Awesome. Well, Randy, if you could, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your role at the Boston Red Sox, and also how you met HYCU and how you sort of got to know what our solution was all about.
Yeah, sure. So I've been with the club for 22 years, if you can believe it. And I've been sort of serving in various roles during my time here. Up until recently now, where I'm sort of serving as Vice President of Technology Operations and Cyber for the team. And so there are kind of like four main prongs to my role. One is to do everything I can to build, resilient, high-performing, highly available business systems and networks. And so that's one prong. The other is delivering white glove customer service for the business and all of our sort of sister companies to the degree that I sort of need to do that. The other is to work with sort of like partners, like yourselves, to deliver on technology solutions and maximize the value we're getting out of relationships. And the other is to make sure I'm running like a well-oiled machine from a venue point of view. There's a lot of technology that goes into maintaining a baseball operation in a venue on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm responsible for making sure, all the tech behind the scenes that runs the business is sort of working well.
That's incredible. It was interesting in speaking with you. I don't think I ever realized the extent to which there are unique technology challenges running a Major League Baseball team's IT operations. Could you talk to us a little bit about, what's unique about, running tech for the Boston Red Sox or with your team, and how that played into sort of the decision to reach out to HYCU and Okta?
Yeah, well, it's a fast-paced business. If you think about the baseball business, we have, 40,000 people sort of coming in our direction on a day-to-day basis. From communications, Wi-Fi, point of sale, all of the baseball systems that sort of run everything we do from a scouting and player development perspective, all of the CRM and enterprise data warehouse applications and all the line of business apps that, every business sort of uses on a day-to-day basis, but, we have those here too. We're no different. It's a pretty diverse ecosystem of tech, that we sort of have to manage and manage in kind of like a fast-paced 24/7 environment. I laugh a lot because, when I joined the club, there are probably only 75 full-time employees, that were sort of working here, and now we're kind of like 10 times as big. We have sort of a broad portfolio of sports properties at our parent company. And so, we do quite a bit of collaboration with our peers at those other properties to advance their tech roadmaps and help them. And then they help us in many cases too. So they're, and the amount of data that we're sort of taking in on a day-to-day basis now it's like every other business, it's mission critical. What introduced us to you guys, from a needs point of view, was, our need to do a better job with data protection for all of the systems and data that sort of like lived on-prem. We were very, very sort of like, single-threaded in many ways. So in talking to our friends at MLB, who were a customer of yours, and they were, 2 or 3 years ahead of us, relative to protecting their Google Cloud Platform environment, by way of using HYCU. We sort of learned about, how they were using you guys, and we sort of, we opened up a dialogue with you guys to go down a similar path, doing a better job protecting our cloud environments, but those use cases sort of expanded, as we had subsequent conversations to a bunch of other use cases, which I'm sure we'll kind of talk about while we're chatting here.
Well, it's so interesting, right? Because you started that conversation talking about how you've got all of these sort of dynamic challenges, running technology for a major league sports team. You talked about being introduced to HYCU originally as an on-prem data protection provider, but then it really changed, didn't it? And we sort of just started to broaden the scope and the aperture as we started to look at all the various different data silos you had at the Boston Red Sox. Could you talk a little bit about that and what we uncovered?
Yeah. We, I mean, as you know, we engaged with you to start, as kind of a solution to protect our GCP environment, and also as a solution to replicate our on-prem Dell Isilon cluster, because we really had no good backup of that platform, into a cloud native environment that was sort of like cost effective to manage. And so, after speaking with you guys and sort of rolling up our sleeves and getting to work, we now sort of have HYCU. It's kind of like a single, sort of like a Swiss Army knife for data protection for all of our on-prem and cloud systems. So that includes Office 365, includes VMware, GCP, Azure. Now we're using you guys, to protect SaaS applications like Okta, Atlassian products. Salesforce is on our sort of short-term roadmap. So you guys really have kind of like positioned yourselves, and it's incredible for us to have kind of a single partner, that can provide data protection for all of those different disparate systems, no matter sort of where they live. So we're really sort of like, started with 1 or 2 use cases. Now it's kind of like 5 or 6.
Yeah, and I think this is what so many customers sort of appreciate. They use Okta for single sign-on, for example. They understand how many different data silos they have, and they really have no way to protect them with a single pane of glass. And I was thrilled that obviously the Red Sox were able to do that. Could you tell us a little bit about Okta? Obviously, Okta are an investor in HYCU and a strategic partner for us. Why did you choose Okta at the Boston Red Sox?
Yeah, I mean, we have, you may be aware, Simon, we have an incredible centralized MLB cybersecurity capability at the league. And, there's like 20 tools in that cybersecurity stack, really central to that program. Like if I were going to plot all of those tools in terms of their importance on kind of like a chart with concentric circles, like Okta would be right in the middle of the innermost circle, because it really is, a centralized source of identity for us and our employees. So as you know, we're using it for single sign-on, but also to enforce multi-factor authentication to all of those mission critical apps. We've been an Okta customer for well over a decade. So we're, we couldn't be happier with Okta. So.
Well, we love to hear that. And I know you're a marquee customer for them, certainly. And I'm sure everybody watching this will be thrilled to hear how much you're enjoying the Okta experience. When you think about bringing HYCU and Okta together, what does that look like? What's the better together story with HYCU and Okta vis-a-vis the Boston Red Sox?
Yeah, well, for me, it's just like sort of about ubiquitous data protection for all of our cloud platforms, and so like, Ryan's much more, my colleague Ryan is sort of like, in the weeds with HYCU on a day-to-day basis. I've just sort of been introduced to our graph. It's really awesome. It's cool to see on a visual, all of the Okta enabled apps that we have, and then which ones are being protected by HYCU, sort of like in real time in a visual sort of representation. That's going to be critical for us because we fingerprinted over 1,000 applications in our environment, by way of other tools, wow. And so we spend a lot of time, our manager of cybersecurity here spent a lot of time in Okta because we're trying to corral all this sort of authentication activity for these mission critical apps. And I don't think a week goes by where we're not adding 1 or 2 additional applications into Okta using kind of like a risk-based approach. Usually it's like, we'll look at the amount of usage that we're seeing for a given cloud app and the nature of the data, that is being sort of contained within that SaaS app. And whether or not data protection, by way of HYCU is sort of like warranted. Yeah, it's going to be our sort of like natural progression. Like, is this a mission critical app? Has it reached a certain sort of like threshold where we need to pay attention to this, from a cyber and data protection point of view, and then we go on the attack, securing it with Okta and then layering HYCU to do the data protection part of it.
There's 2 incredible things that you just said that I'd love to sort of draw everyone's attention to. The first is 1,000 apps alone at just the Boston Red Sox. Brandon, we talk a lot about data silo sprawl and how, our graph, the usage of, Okta to identify apps and then HYCU to visualize them with our graph creates this sort of wonderful convergence. And a lot of folks say, we just don't have that many apps until they start to think about it, they start analyzing, and suddenly they realize, oh no, we've got hundreds, if not thousands.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible just at a small company like this, how many cloud applications people use, and some of them are just small, just small productivity tools, others become like a real thing here, like for us, like Trello, Asana, Confluence, a lot of like well-known productivity tools, started with just 1 or 2 people, and now we have 200, so like those are the kinds of things, like those trends We need to kind of like pay attention to, because, again, like we're a small, nimble, agile environment. It's not often that employees will come to us and say, hey, Randy, like I'm using this new productivity tool. It's awesome. Like they'll just start using it, or they'll buy it, and then they tell their colleagues about it. And before you know it, there's, 100 people using it, so it's like, it's that sort of thing we constantly need to sort of like be paying attention to, and in some cases react, in other cases we're a little more proactive, but just having the platform, the data protection platform, and the identity and MFA platform in place, to secure those tools by way of Okta and HYCU has been incredible for us.
Well, that's wonderful. And so again, I think the ability to sort of converge single sign-on with visualization and data protection from HYCU seems like it's serving you really well. Randy, if you could, to kind of close this out, what are the biggest results of the Okta HYCU Red Sox partnership from your perspective? How is it really impacting your day-to-day and the way that you think about data protection and data management?
I guess the biggest thing for me is like I can sleep well at night, knowing that all of the data in these platforms are protected. Honestly, like I can't say I had a good sort of like DR plan for my Okta tenant, if disaster were to strike, and now, for all of these sort of like these centralized systems like Okta and all these edge systems, and other SaaS apps, now we have a proper sort of like data protection strategy in place, where before we were just kind of like crossing our fingers and hoping nothing bad happens. So like for me, that's like I can truthfully say we have a good like comprehensive data protection strategy now in place for all those SaaS applications that I can trust and rely on.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, Randy George, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you for being a HYCU and Okta customer. And to all of our friends at Okta, thank you very much for the partnership.